reporting up here where some important science was done involving Mr. Einstein. And so we're using the Mount Wilson Observatory as our backdrop and focal point for a look at Einstein, the person of the century. This doesn't necessarily mean that he's the best scientist of the century. It just means that relative to all the others, he's the best. Time can speed up or slow down. Whoa, what a shocker. And the rules of the universe are very different than anybody ever thought before. So said the playful physicist who really stood everything on its ear.
His theories were part of the influence that created modern science and all the technology. Without relativity theory, the world would be a very different place.
Einstein's California connection is up here at Mount Wilson. He came up here in the early 30s to meet Edmund Hubble. You know, the guy they named this $2 billion space telescope after. The scope that we have borrowed from for our pictures of deep space in this story. Einstein came up here, and because of Hubble's work on this telescope right here, Hubble discovering that our Milky Way wasn't the only galaxy in the universe after all, Einstein had his incredible mind changed.
Einstein created this thing called the cosmological constant. He did not like the idea that the universe expanded. And that was one of the things that really drove him nuts. And he also,
it does expand.
But it does expand.
And once Hubble let Einstein look through what was then the biggest telescope in the world, things changed.
First, people, of course, believed that the Earth was the center of the universe. Then, well, maybe it's the sun. Then the next step was, well, our own galaxy. But Hubble and Einstein changed all that.
And Mount Wilson changed Einstein.
It seemed senseless to me to believe that there was an expanding universe. But when he came out and met Hubble and saw the telescope, he changed his mind.
As for being person of the century, well, today's scientists say it's remarkable.
Well, it's remarkable, but not very surprising. He's probably the best, one of the greatest scientists that's ever been, let alone in the last century. And he's contributed in more ways than one to just about everything we do.
Even television.
Well, yeah, a consequence of his work was the quantum theory, and without quantum theory there'd be no transistors, and without transistors there'd be no TV.
So without Einstein, you and I wouldn't be standing here right now talking about it.
We'd both be unemployed, yeah.
And to show that the great man had a great sense of humor as well, Albert Einstein, mugging for the cameras, Nobel Prize winner, perhaps the smartest guy ever. In fact, you know, for many years, they tried to figure out, long after his death, they tried to figure out if there was anything special about his brain. Couldn't figure it out for a long time, but finally, as technology improved, a group of Canadian researchers found out that certain parts of Einstein's brain, the part dealing with mathematical reasoning, were much larger than usual. The guy really was something special. Next hour, we'll perform our own experiment in relativity. E equals MC, you know what, and we'll show you how it works. Coming up next hour, live from Mount Wilson. Carlos,
leave it to those Canadians to tell us that Einstein was special.
Yeah.
Yep, that's what we need them for.
And we only discovered that recently.
That was just last year.
Last year, what the world basically knew, we discovered recently.
That was very interesting. We forget all of this. Thank you, Bill Smith.
Speaking of smart, chimpanzees may never get jobs as accountants.
You may have known from seeing the Time magazine, they did pick him as the person of the century. I guess it was close. Elvis was a close second. Thank heavens for small favors. But some key work involving Einstein's work happens up here at the big 100-inch telescope, which for a long time was the biggest telescope in the year. So as they sorted through the great names to find out who would be the person of the century, well, Einstein's the one. Albert Einstein, person of the century. Well, at the 100-inch telescope that played a brief but major role in Einstein's life, today's astronomers say...
Well, it's remarkable, but not very surprising. He's probably the best, one of the greatest scientists that's ever been, let alone in the last century.
Not that Einstein was perfect. Nope. One of his theories fell short of the Big Bang and was instead a big bomb.
He was working in his final hours there, was continuing to work to try to get the universe to make sense without quantum theory.
So even Einstein had problems he couldn't solve.
He was a human just like the rest of us.
Oh, the little kid with the big intellect was human, all right. This vehicle could get him nowhere near the speed of light. This E equals MC squared business.
E equals MC squared is the heart of it all, really.
The theory of relativity, meaning within the atom, a very little mass contains an enormous amount of energy, and everything in the universe is relative.
wherever you are, everything seems to be moving away from you, no matter where you are in the universe.
And inside the Wilson Telescope dome in here, Sean, a little experiment in relativity. You can do that for us?
Sure, we can do that.
Hit the relativity button, if you will.
Okay, here it goes.
All right. He's hitting the relativity button, and you'll see in a minute what we mean by this, because all motion is
Relative.
relative. So something is moving right now. What's moving? The telescope is moving?
No, actually, the telescope is staying still. It may look like it's rotating, but I am standing still, and the telescope is not moving.
Then I must be moving.
You were moving, Bill.
So the whole dome is moving, and I'm here. No, I'm moving.
You're moving.
Who's moving?
You're moving.
This relativity stuff is really hard to figure out. One of us is moving. And we will speed up the tape here to show you it is the whole dome surrounding the telescope that's moving. That is, moving relative to the telescope, I guess. So, some 70 years after his best science, Einstein's view of the universe still holds up pretty good.
It holds up. You have to do some corrections for relativity, which he also developed and things like that. But yeah, it all holds up.
And kind of remarkable to think that this big telescope here at Mount Wilson really changed Einstein's thinking. Back in those days, they thought that the Milky Way, our galaxy of 100 billion stars, was pretty much the whole universe. It took this telescope up here at Mount Wilson with Edmund Hubble to discover all those billions of other galaxies out there. So here in Southern California at Mount Wilson, they changed Einstein's thinking, and it stuck.
See, he needed us.
Yeah, he did need us.
You know, Mark Kriske, you know, he's a big fan of Albert
Yes,
Einstein.
I am.
And his theory is wherever he goes, there he is.
There he is.
That's amazing.
By the way, this telescope is open on the weekends. You can come up and see it. If the weather's good, they open it up, and then during the spring and summer months, they actually have guided tours, too. It is a big, important piece of history in Southern California, and when you see it in person, it knocks your socks off.
Yeah, but the amazing thing is, Bill, as powerful as that telescope was
Yeah.
when it was built, now it is just
A telescope.
It's just a telescope now.
You know, actually, the telescope guys told me that the optics, the lenses on this telescope and the mirrors, the optics is sharper than the Hubble Space Telescope.
Yeah.
But since Hubble's above the atmosphere, it still gets those deeper, further,
You know, this
better
is an
visions.
interesting debate.
Yes.
We don't have Einstein here to settle it.
No,
but
we
Bill
don't.
Smith, thanks so much. You have all of his books and...